When it comes to police exercising their powers, how far is too far? Just this week in Christchurch, a man gunned down by police and two very different versions of what happened. Would a police video have made the difference? They're routinely used in America, but do the pictures always tell the whole story? Here's Primetime's Mary Fulganetti.
It's an appalling scene. A young woman forcibly pushed down and held by 5 deputies as she pleads to know what's going on.
I don't know what you're doing! I don't know why you're doing this!
For several minutes, she struggles under their grip, until finally, it appears the chokehold on her neck causes her to pass out.
There are allegations guards abused at least
when this
two
tape
female
made
prisoners.
news, it sparked cries of outrage. The young victim could have been anyone's daughter. The newspaper posting the footage on its website says it became their most watched video ever. It led to indictments. But as you'll see later, the story behind this tape could possibly reveal a much different picture from what you see here. Which raises the question, when it comes to all those videos of police confrontations on the web, can you really believe what you see with your own eyes? On YouTube alone, there are nearly 10,000 scenes labeled police brutality, showing disturbing behavior on the part of police. Some have led to investigations or ignited national controversy, and the public has become judge and jury.
I'm appalled at this story.
Without knowing all the facts.
Seeing that video, it was appalling.
But experts say there's a danger when only a portion of police action goes viral on the web. So here's a little test. Which of the following are cases where you'd say police were in the wrong? In Washington, D.C., a homeless man carrying a knife was being held at bay by 4 officers with guns. As the man stood with his hands down looking away, a 5th officer arrived on the scene and immediately shot him. He died moments later. Toledo, Ohio. This woman was pulled over for speeding. The cop wrote her a ticket, but she refused to accept it and threw the ticket out of the window. So the cop took her down.
Put it down now. Get to the ground. Put your hand behind your back. Put your hand behind your back.
And in Cincinnati, Ohio, 41-year-old Nathaniel Jones was pummeled by police 36 times after he caused a disturbance at a restaurant. A few minutes later, he was dead.
Sir.
That's a murder.
That's outrageous.
When we showed the tapes to people on the street, not one person thought this last confrontation was justifiable.
They murdered him.
But believe it or not, only one of the cases we showed you was considered excessive use of force. And surprisingly, it's the case of the woman who threw her ticket out of the window.
Police officers are not empowered to make arrests for contempt of cop.
Dr. Lawrence Sherman heads up the Center for Criminology at the University of Pennsylvania.
It's an assault. The police officer has assaulted an innocent citizen.
Put it down now. Get to the ground.
But if this is an assault, how is it that this shooting is not considered to be in cold blood? Dr. Sherman says his students are often divided on the answer.
Sometimes in this room with 150 people sitting here, I've got 75 of them who say the officer who shot the guy should have been indicted for murder.
But the officer wasn't indicted, even though the man he shot doesn't appear at the moment to be an immediate threat.
He was standing without lunging, without advancing, just standing still. It's at that moment in time that he gets shot and killed.
That's right.
That's what troubles me.
And that's what troubles me. I certainly wouldn't have shot him. I think that what the police officer who shot him did was wrong. Morally wrong, but legally justified.
What you don't see is that the man had been standing in front of the White House. He had been ordered to drop his knife several times, but he didn't. There's always the possibility that a suspect can suddenly attack, as they have in other cases.
He's been walking towards the officers. In a split second, he could be putting a knife in an officer's stomach.
I mean, who's to say that he doesn't take off running? And now we can't shoot him. now he's headed towards people armed with a knife.
But I think a typical layperson watching this would say, wasn't there another way to immobilize him short of shooting him dead?
Officers have been killed using tasers.
A court ruled the officer was legally empowered to shoot to kill.
Put your hand behind your back! Put your hand behind your back!
What about the case you saw earlier? The one that everyone thought was an outrage.
Is this another case of police brutality? Is this another Rodney King?
Not what I saw.
So take a look at the whole case. When the first officer arrives on the scene, Jones attacks first, punching the officer. During the scuffle, Jones tried to grab an officer's baton and a gun.
Put your hand behind your back! Put your hand behind your back!
Police ordered him to back up or put his hands behind his back 23 times.
Put your hand behind your back!
But he didn't comply.
Put your hand behind your back! Put your hand behind your back!
He was physically resisting their efforts to get him to be handcuffed.
So they could have hit him 200 times before he was restrained, and that could be justifiable.
Well, and he could have killed them.
But while many officers have been cleared by these tapes, there are also times they've been found to be in the wrong. Sherman says it's difficult to judge when a tape only shows part of the story.
She's been drunk! That's who she is!
That's why police in parts of England now wear cameras on their hats.
I can hear you nearly.
All of that is seen from the perspective of the officer. Was it reasonable for the officer to believe that their life was in danger?
Police say their own tapes are increasingly being used against them.